Welcome to the Catholic Film Club, where we grade all films on kind of a pass-fail basis on how Catholic they are or not. So,
Yes.
Pat, the last episode I talked with Tom Hoops about Conclave.
Mm-hmm.
That had popes in it.
Yes.
So I'm going to give that a A+.
Okay.
Now, based on our scale,
Mm-hmm.
how would you rate Heretic?
I would rate it as a D.
A D.
Yeah.
Yeah, more like an LDS. You would rate it a D. Catholic Film Club discussion about Heretic. Take one. Mormons are, I think, reacting to this film, Heretic, in the same way that me and Tom reacted to Conclave, which is just like, what is this? Like, what is this depiction of Mormonism?
Yeah. And also religion, too, as a whole, because it's in a lot of ways, like Mormonism is at the forefront. Mormonism is the forefront religion, but there are several other religions discussed pretty heavily in it.
Yeah, and we can get into that, but I think Mormonism is really just a proxy for a much more basic discussion that the film is trying to put out there. But can you tell us, Pat, what the film's about?
Sure. So Heretic is a 2024 release by the wonderful production company A24. Wonderful and wacky, I might add. And basic premise is we have two young Mormon female missionaries who are doing their, evangelization route of the day, and they approach this kind of old, off in the distance house, and there's an elderly Englishman there, played by Hugh Grant, and he invites them inside and tells them that his wife is in the house, and that's important because the Mormon missionaries can't go in the house without a female present. So they go in the house and they kind of engage in this philosophical and theological discussion with some ominous undertones.
Yeah, that's
and we figure out that there's something somewhat evil and dark at play, which these young missionaries are going to soon find out, and so is the audience.
Yeah, it's so Hugh Grant plays Mr. Reed. He's this kind of at first just odd and then creepy man. And then the sisters are Sister Barnes, played by Sophie Thatcher, who is in Yellow Jackets apparently, and Sister Paxton, played by Chloe East, who I didn't even recognize her, but it makes a ton of sense. She was in The Fabelmans as the young Steven Spielberg's kind of very, 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 very Christian girlfriend.
Gotcha.
So she's following like a track here.
Yeah, she's getting typecast.
Well, it's a similar role too. Like one thing I like about the movie is that you can remember the names of the characters because they are so distinct.
Yes. And there's kind of only three main characters, so it's pretty simple to follow
but sometimes
along.
you can't even do that. And so how would you describe like the differences between Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton?
Yeah, I think it's Sister Paxton is the blonde-haired lady.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I'm trying to make sure I don't mess the two up. Sister Barnes.
All these memorable characters.
Wait, Sister Paxton. Sister Paxton is the slightly naive, seems to be the more devout of the two and more assured Mormon of the two. Slightly younger, super cheerful and bubbly and outgoing and extroverted. Oh my gosh, I'm already messing it up. Sister Barnes seems to be slightly older, slightly more introverted, more, honestly, from the get-go, more wary and hesitant at her own Mormon religion. I think that's set up that she has some doubts. She doesn't seem to be very like gung-ho about the religion.
Yeah, it's funny because she is more reserved, and Sister Paxton is, as you said, more bubbly. And these are like dynamics that do appear, I think, in every religion. You're going to have the like the gung-ho, all in kind of naive, you could say, but it's just a personality thing. There's going to be those are two ends of the spectrum. And I really liked both of their performances quite a bit. I thought that, and I've never seen Sophie Thatcher in anything before, but I thought that she displayed a good, quiet strength. And Chloe East, the evolution of her character was, well, it was interesting to say the least. And it turns out that they both actually were raised in Mormonism, both of those actresses. And one of the directors even has married into a Mormon family, although it's not clear whether his wife is practicing Mormon or if it's just that his extended family is now practicing Mormon. But regardless, there's some familiarity here with the rhythms of the way a Mormon missionary goes about their day. So that's Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East playing Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton, respectively. But I mean, the selling point of the movie is that Hugh Grant is in a horror film.
Yes.
And what did you think of that? Are you a Hugh Grant fan?
Oh, I'm a huge Hugh Grant fan. I think the very first main film I encountered was The Gentleman of Hugh Grant, which is kind of the later one that only came out a few years ago.
Yeah.
But he's the writers and directors wrote the story and the character of Mr. Reed with Hugh Grant in mind. They said the only person that could play Mr. Reed was Hugh Grant. So in the beginning, he's almost, as we say, he's a fun character, and we know that he's going to be the antagonist, but he's set up as a person that's almost like a normal character that we might encounter on the street, and is a little odd, little weird, but is inquisitive at least.
Yeah, the other cool thing about the character is that, well, the sort of fun twisty thing is that immediately when he sits them down, he seems to like really want to talk about religion.
Yes.
Because basically what he starts doing in the movie is he takes them on kind of a sinister interactive crash course in comparative religions.
Yep.
That gets progressively more and more dire. You can see in the trailer he's setting up he's basically setting them up as like, okay, if you want out of this house, then you've got to go through one of these two doors. One is belief, one is disbelief. Given all of the sort of truth bombs I've laid at you over this conversation, what are you going to choose? What's the scariest, you know? How the movie unfolds from there is really fun. What did you think about the movie overall? Like, did you have a good time?
Overall, I had a very good experience. I thought it was, I would get some great performances. I knew that the cinematography and the setting that typical A24 films create is something that's worthwhile seeing. For those that are into that.
The cinematography was done by the cinematographer works a lot with Park Chan-wook. He's a South Korean cinematographer, works on Old Boy, a lot of those movies.
Yeah, did he do Memories of Murder?
Well, that's Bong Joon-ho. But
that is, yep.
But
called out.
Just, you know what, Patrick? He didn't.
Cruising right on past that.
Is Park Chan-wook an iteration of Bong Joon-ho, or is Bong Joon-ho an iteration of Park Chan-wook?
They very well could be the same.
Iterations are a big thing in this movie.
Yes.
Go ahead. You were singing the praises.
The horror aspect. So I'm not, as you know, and as audiences might know, I'm not a big horror person. So this seemed to be something where it was like, a good mix of thriller and horror, which is usually kind of the really like sweet spot that I like with horror films. But I was interested mainly for the aspect of combining religion with horror and seeing how that plays. Yeah. It was a great performance. I have a few critiques. I have a few things that I think the film might have been able to explore more profoundly, might have been able to pull off more effectively story-wise.
Yeah.
But as a whole, I would give it some thumbs up. I would totally recommend it. And I might add that a cinematic experience would be the best way for audiences to experience this movie because of the way it plays with sound and audio and the way it uses silence and then noise. So you have so many moments of straight up silence and then just using really, really well executed and well timed sound effects and audio cues, and then juxtaposing that with just extreme noise and music and loudness. Mm-hmm. So it really kept myself and the audience as a whole on their toes, kind of just keeping us at a state of unease, while then again, throwing us off with some Hugh Grant humor and comedy, which is why it was, done really effectively, because like you said, Hugh Grant is this disarming character and you want to instinctively trust him. You want to like him, but you also you don't know how evil he is. You don't know what his intentions are in the beginning. They're not all pure and good.
Yeah.
But the unease for me was like, okay, well, how far is this character willing to go, and how bad of a guy is he?
Yeah, he does keep you on your toes with that. And I love what you're saying about the sound design too, like calling that out. It because it really makes a lot of, it gets a lot out of its clockwork house. I mean,
yes,
really the sound is an extension of like the environment, and environment is set up brilliantly here.
Yes,
with the way that the house is constructed. I mean, it's really laid into the story as well. You find out that, should we just get into the spoilers? So
let's get into
the goal.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Tell us about like what it ends up Mr. Reed's whole game is.
You just want to jump right to it?
Well, maybe we should preface this by saying, like, this movie is about Mormon missionaries. It's not about attacking Mormonism, because, like, that's pretty low-hanging fruit. You could do that.
It's been done before.
There are many things, and I might even link a couple of videos from Trent Horn of the Council of Trent, who's a Catholic apologist who discusses the many differences between Catholicism, Christianity, and Latter-day Saints, and points out that really the gods that are worshipped here are entirely different in character and nature, have nothing to do with each other. So there's a lot of things you could bring up about to debunk the Book of Mormon. He's not really interested in doing that, this character, or the movie. It's more riding that knife edge of like, do I believe or do I not believe?
There are either two options. The first option is an all-powerful God who lets bad things happen to good people.
Right.
He uses that kind of argument. And he says, or there is a world where there is no God. And then that is just as terrifying. That's kind of what he says.
Yeah, that's basically it. That's what he does to set up the because the thing is, he's constructed this house, and to go back to like the way that the house is constructed and baked into the screenplay, one interesting thing is that the front door is not going to open. You've crossed through it, and they say, we can't get out. And he says, that's right. You can only go through. What he's basically setting up there is that if you are born into a faith, or if you've been exposed to a faith, you can't unexpose yourself to something. You can't turn back the clock. You're going to have to wrestle with this and find a way through it. And you're going to go through the door of belief or disbelief.
Yep. It's also an interesting point, kind of building off what you just said, that the metaphor of the house is likened to Dante's Inferno with the seven levels of hell, where they do have an insert shot where he has an image of the map of hell from Dante's Inferno. And as we can see in the stories, the characters will descend to different layers of the house/hell, and seeing all the different things that they discover in these different levels.
And we're talking about Reed's goal here, but I think we have to like spoil everything and just lay all the chips out before we can really have a full discussion on it.
Let's throw the chips out here.
So yeah, I got
chips.
Snake eyes.
Insert chips.
What's the big spoiler? What's the big reveal?
So
what's his game, Mr. Reed?
Poor Mr. Reed. He's not a good person. So Mr. Reed has decided for himself and informs our Mormon missionaries that the real religion, as he has come to discover, is control. And how he has internalized that is by kidnapping and imprisoning multiple women in his basement and using them to his own devices for this theological test that he's putting our characters through.
Yeah.
And he, throughout the story and throughout the film, he explains and attempts to debunk all the religions out there and, sets up this binary option for a god, either an evil god or no god at all, and how both of those options are terrifying. And then basically just says control is the real religion. Control is the only way to maintain stability and maintain a relative peace in this world. And I mean, does it go beyond that?
I don't think it does, but I think that's what sort of build in the film as sort of the his big thesis that he is living out. Now on the way to this point, there are some interesting twists and turns. Sister Barnes, who has been the sort of the stronger one of the two, the one who is much more capable. She is killed at about the end of the second act, I would say.
Yeah.
And now the character you think is the most expendable of the two, Sister Paxton, she's now the one who has to step up and battle him. And where the movie leaves its philosophical discussion is interesting, because she basically apostatizes by saying that she's going to pray for Mr. Barnes, but she knows, based on this like study that she saw on the internet, that prayer doesn't work. She says prayer doesn't. Remember that? She says prayer doesn't work, but I think it's nice that people pray anyway. So it's like leaving on this.
That kind of when she, I forgot about that. When she said that, I was like,
yeah.
Okay.
But so it's leaving on this kind of like secular humanist note. Now, now right after that, when it seems that they're both going to die, she witnesses what you could see as a miracle of Sister Barnes, like I said, waking up and killing Mr. Reed before dying again, mimicking the sort of fake resurrection that Mr. Reed had set up with one of these multiple wives, quote unquote, doing a bit of a switcheroo. And so I think that's another example of the film doing a cool thing where it's like, oh, it's setting up, it's just going to be a secular humanist thing. Oh, did she just witness a miracle? You know, was she spared thanks to the hand of God?
They had some interesting foreshadowing moments with kind of unique payoffs. I think one of the interesting ones was how the setup in the beginning of Act 1 that Sister Paxton kind of offhandedly mentions if she would be reincarnated, it would be as a butterfly, which sort of, misled the audience to think, oh, well, like maybe if she is the one that's going to die in this, something might come up with a butterfly.
Yeah. The funny thing is that, I did a little bit of internet research on this. Mormons do not believe in reincarnation by and large.
And that was an interesting point, because they've clearly have a pretty good understanding of Mormonism, which is why I was like, they understand the basic things about Mormonism. So if they were going to the effort to talk about whether reincarnation was real or not, I think maybe I might argue that was intentional. So at the end of the movie, when Sister Paxton escapes the house, she ends up in this snowy white field, and it's cold, and she's dying from her wounds, and a butterfly appears on her hand. Keep in mind, Sister Barnes has died already, so it's kind of potentially signifying that this is Sister Barnes, and she's letting her know, like, hey, I'm okay. Yeah. But then it cuts to reality, and reality is that she's just hallucinating the butterfly in her hand.
Yeah, and then it ends.
And then
it plays Knocking on Heaven's Door. I guess implying that she dies.
Yes. The interesting thing is kind of what you said, like if it's already established that Mormons don't believe in reincarnation, maybe that is something where some of them do. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I almost saw, my interpretation is that the butterfly represents religion as a whole, since that the gateway to religion is Mormonism. That's kind of the device.
Mm-hmm.
And they talk about religion as a whole and broader themes apart from just Mormonism about belief and unbelief, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost saw it as combine this butterfly theory with the fact that Sister Paxton talks about pretty important aspects of religion, about prayer, and how at the end of the day prayer isn't really real,
mm-hmm.
isn't very effective, but it's a nice thing to think about.
Yeah.
I almost got the impression that the butterfly represents religion, and religion is at the end of the day not real, but it's a nice thing to think about.
That's kind of where I thought the movie lost me, was right at the end, actually. And it's because up to this point, the movie has done such a good job of talking not even just about religion itself, but about belief systems
mm-hmm.
and the things that we believe in general.
Mm-hmm.
One, in the way that it's using the house as a mental metaphor. It's like a metaphor for the mind or the soul, mm-hmm. once it in its journey through the religious discussions and wrestling with basically, is there an afterlife or not?
Mm-hmm.
It's also setting up a critique, though, of putting on any worldview, and even like how media is part of that. So
mm-hmm.
at the beginning, there is a what could be what I think the movie is trying to make you think is just kind of like a edgelord conversation between the two Mormon sisters,
mm-hmm.
where it's like, oh, these are what Mormons are really talking about on their time off.
Mm-hmm.
It opens with the two of them, and they are. This is going to be a little bit. It's a very adult conversation, so just to be any warning to a parent who might be listening to this around their kids, but it has to be talked about. Yep. I think their Sister Paxton and Sister Barnes, mostly Sister Paxton, really, mm-hmm. the devout one, is asking about like condom sizes, mm-hmm. and they're sitting on a bench that's advertising condoms, but the more instructive thing that she's talking about is she admits that she saw like a pornography, she calls
mm-hmm.
it. And right there, like alarm bells are going. She's like, huh? What? Huh?
Yep,
what? Huh?
Yep.
And like, what kind of Mormon missionary is this? And she is talking about how in the pornography, I'm just going to keep using her phraseology there. The sort of couple were having sex, and then suddenly like a neighbor knocked really loud on their wall of their apartments, and she saw the illusion fall, and she was like, and they saw that they were just in this like construction, and they were like they immediately, you could see the shame on their faces of what they were doing, and that's how I knew that Mormonism was real. So that's
mm-hmm.
a leap on her part.
Yep.
But what's instructive there is, I think that the movie is grappling with that idea of setting up the way that media, and it's relating religion to media as well, mm-hmm. constructing worldviews, mm-hmm. and how worldviews are said to you, mm-hmm. are fed to you. Mm-hmm. She's also saying in there, it's like, I think the only reason that people don't believe the Book of Mormon is because they've been constantly fed the advertising, mm-hmm. of the ridiculous kind of Mormonism, or that the Book of Mormon is wrong, and that's mm-hmm. the only reason why. Mm-hmm. So it's setting up that kind of like thing, which is why it was really disappointing to me to see the filmmakers put their thumb on the scale in that way, mm-hmm. at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's like, that's not like, when you show something that's happening in someone's mind, that's the filmmaker talking. That's not a progression of story and character action.
Yeah.
So I don't know if the filmmakers are aware that they're doing this, but they're basically, what they're setting up is they're falling into that trap. They're falling into that trap of like, they've constructed a secular humanist worldview, and the audience is now acting that out.
Yeah, I think it's also yet another example of the show don't tell, and they're telling, and they're in my opinion, disagree with me if you want, but as far as the going back to the most traditional roots of storytelling, the last thing you want to do as a filmmaker is tell the audience what they should believe.
Yeah.
The most effective tool of a story is to present a theory, to present a worldview, and then leave it up to the audience to believe it, to not believe it, to debate it. Mm-hmm. The unfortunate thing is this is another missed opportunity yet again that we see. An interesting point of view offered, an interesting debate, shown through this thriller horror film about belief, unbelief, religion. But at the end of the day, they just say, hey, prayer is fake, religion is not real, and, all of those contraptions are nice thoughts, and at best they're a weighted blanket to comfort you within this cold world.
Yeah.
But they also kind of say that, Mr. Reed's philosophy and religion of control is also erroneous and not real.
Yeah.
But then again, they don't present a third option. Mm-hmm. They contradict themselves, I think, in the way where they debunk Mormonism / religion, as well as the alternate view of control. Mm-hmm. And they leave it at that. And they don't present hope. They present kind of a cold, bleak look at the world, which is very unfortunate. Because they highlight really good aspects of religion. Mm-hmm. They highlight the inner strength of these two women and their, religious convictions. And that in of itself is compelling. But they leave the story and they leave the audience kind of hopeless, which is unfortunate, to say the least.
Yeah.
Missed opportunity.
Yeah, missed opportunity. I think... And the funny thing is, like, Mr. Reed, I was thinking about this too, and about control. We're pointing out where the movie went wrong. I think another place where it went right, though, is in sort of the construction of its screenplay is, Mr. Reed's religion is control, but it shows that he, it's like, who's being controlled here? Mm-hmm. Like, he is. Because we know nothing about Mr. Reed's backstory. Mm-hmm. You keep expecting, and right from the get-go, I'm expecting there to be like a tragic backstory, or like a wife that was lost, or something. But no, that's not explored. It's hinted at, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Mm-hmm. But what I think the movie does well is it sort of just in its construction shows how, yes, Mr. Reed's living in a worldview, and he's kind of controlled by it as well. I mean, what does Mr. Reed do all day?
Yep.
Like,
it seems that for Mormon missionaries to show up, and
the deeper we go into his psyche, into the psyche of this house, he's got this crazy house that he's constructed with this, like, labyrinth of religious stuff that he hopes someday some missionary will come by and get him. He's got to constantly feed these women that he's been that he's kidnapped.
Yep.
The top floor is pretty well kept. The bottom, the rest of it, not very well.
Not so much
put together, but
yes.
Not so well put together. But it kind of shows that he's a prisoner of his own belief as well. I mean, he's a prisoner in that house as well.
Very much. And it's also interesting to point out that while he says control is the real religion, the other unique thing, the huge existential flaw in Mr. Reed's philosophy, I think, when he talks about religion, is he says that all of them are iterations, and he says that he points out plot holes, if you will, within religions.
Mm-hmm.
And he attempts to debunk all of them. But I think what he's missing, the huge thing he's missing within belief, is that belief is not being able to provide an answer for everything. And that's what he sees religion as, is he says, well, take Mormonism, take Judaism, take Christianity. There are things that you can't prove to be true. Therefore, it's not true. What he's talking about is fact. He's talking about, okay, we know that 1 + 1 is 2 based on mathematics. We know that the sky is blue. We know that the earth is round. We know facts.
Yeah.
What he fails to see is that mystery is a part of religion, and that as Catholics, we don't know all the answers, and that's the beauty of religion. And he sees that as, okay, well, it's ridiculous. If you can't provide an answer for everything, you don't know everything to be true. And that's the whole point, is that we are humans, we're finite creatures. No religion, at least Catholicism, doesn't profess to have the answer for every answer you have, which is where belief comes in. Belief is not having an answer or being able to say that every single question you might have has a factual truth to it. It's acknowledging the fact that on earth, our capacity for understanding is limited, and that the only thing that has all the answers is God. And that while we're on earth, all we can do is follow the Lord and follow what he teaches in order to, at the end of this life, and hopefully one day in heaven, receive those answers. But Mr. Reed's downfall is that he was looking for every single answer to be found on earth in a world that is going to end one day. And that the eternity is not going to be found on earth.
He needs Jesus.
He needs Jesus.
To say the least.
He really does need Jesus. I'm going on a tangent right now.
Well, I wanted to know, okay, so this is the part where,
rewrite.
Given all this,
I
just wanted to know, we've talked about the movie's flaws and how it wrong foots itself, let's say. Now, I will say, I think the movie understands Mr. Reed's flaws. I think it does. But I think that the filmmakers are probably in that camp of we would like to believe, but we can't, kind of thing. But given the goals of the movie, I wonder how would we have done it different?
Sure.
Put our money where our mouth is.
Let's crack open the notes here.
Any ideas? I've got a few.
You go first.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
still working on mine.
One is one relates to the ending that we talked about. One is a cameo. Topher Grace, I don't know if you remember, shows up in this movie
for a couple minutes.
Now, I like Topher Grace a lot.
Big fan of
him
Who doesn't
love Topher Grace?
Yeah.
It's like a very winning presence on camera. And he plays the elder who is looking for Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton. And he knocks on Hugh Grant's door, and Hugh Grant says, I didn't see them. And he goes, okay.
Yep.
And then he leaves. Oh, wait.
He comes back.
Here's a pamphlet.
Yep.
Okay, bye. Now, that to me seemed very cuttable. Did you know that Topher Grace re-edits movies for fun?
Like the actor?
Yeah, the actor Topher Grace.
I did not know that.
There's this thing where he just will he'll just take a movie and then he'll recut it as best as he can.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. Let's have him in here.
Yeah, I think Topher Grace...
Can we drop a Topher Grace in right here and have him cut with us? Hey,
there
Topher.
He is. And I guess my point is that I think if Topher Grace, when he gets Heretic in his hands, I think the first move he's going to make is cut himself out of the movie.
Yes.
Because it's not just that it doesn't...
We could have done without Topher Grace. We could have done with more Topher Grace or no Topher Grace.
This is a good principle to live by.
Yes.
For anyone making a movie. No Topher Grace, mo Topher Grace. So And the other thing is it just breaks the tension of the film. Like, you know,
it really does. If you're going to present, like,
it's smack right dab in the middle of this like big scene that Hugh Grant's having.
And it was also like, it set up something where it wasn't like they had him in as a cameo for like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
They had him in several scenes. They even spent a couple minutes showing him in a different environment.
Yeah.
Which really, unfortunately, took me away from the scene.
Yeah.
Where I was like, okay, now we're exiting the house. We're going several miles away to the Mormon church.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, when we're going to the effort to spend minutes in a movie to establish a character and his environment, we're hoping that they have some sort of valuable involvement with the story. Unfortunately, we do not.
Yeah. And he doesn't even like really talk that much. He doesn't even add like any, like, it's funny to see him in a gray wig and big glasses. But other than that, the other thing too is that his cameo makes Mr. Reed's plan make less sense. Because he comes in at a crucial point where this slave woman has eaten that Mr. Reed calls the prophet has eaten a blueberry pie, and Mr. Reed says, "Wait for it." A blueberry pie that makes you die, I should say. It's a poison one. She's gonna die, but wait, she's gonna come back. Then the doorbell rings, and you know, Mr. Reed goes to answer the door, and the girls are like, "Oh, I'm gonna get the like, you know, we gotta escape." Meanwhile, they find out later. Sister Paxton surmises that that slave woman actually died, and then another living slave woman like pushed her down a well and then took her place a little bit. This plan doesn't make any sense if Mr. Reed is just hoping that Topher Grace is going to knock on the door.
Yeah, like what would have happened if Topher Grace didn't knock on the door?
Then I guess we would have been there for a lot longer.
Yes.
They would have just been like, oh, it's day 95 with the dead body. So, which would have, you know, maybe would have underlined the miracle even more. But, so maybe he was brilliant. But yeah, it makes the movie make less sense on a plot point. I don't know. That's just a minor rewrite that I have.
That's a good one. Yeah. More Topher Grace or no Topher Grace.
Yeah.
I would add something very small. I might have removed a few things. I might have removed the line about prayer being pointless. Because up until that point, they established that within dying, our two female protagonists have something that Hugh Grant doesn't have, which is belief in something greater than themselves.
Right.
And regardless of whether that is true or not, that's something that is commendable. It's something that I think is morally good.
Yeah.
But by negating all of that in the last 10 minutes of the movie is really pointless, because you could maintain that moral high ground, if you will, and then have that be kind of the thing that drives Mr. Reed crazy, where like he can't understand it, he can't penetrate it, because all he can do is poke holes in something that he says, like, you can't prove that this is right. But at the same time, I think he does know that his own philosophy is flawed.
Well, he definitely doesn't believe in something greater than himself.
He does not. I would pretty much just clean up the dialogue at the end of the movie. Don't give us a straightforward answer that religion is pointless and that prayer is pointless, and just leave it up to the audience to decide. I think you could have, the way that the characters die would have been much more profound if they die for something that they might not quite understand, but are still going to go to the grave. Yeah. Praying towards a higher power, believing in something greater than themselves.
Yeah. It's like The Wicker Man.
Yes.
I'm just going to say that without going into too much detail, because that's a great movie too. 2. This is a good movie. This is a decent movie.
It's a decent movie.
Wicker Man original is a great movie, I think. I like that. Yeah. I like something that leaves it open and doesn't just put the thumb on the scale and give an answer, because the whole point was not giving answers.
Yes.
So my rewrite kind of goes off of that. It would probably only work if she does give the prayer doesn't work speech at the end, but I want to try this on you.
Sure.
Let's say that everything is the same, even up until up to the butterfly disappearing and being seen as a hallucination. what if she does not die? What if Sister Paxton crawls through the woods back into the town, and some teenagers see her covered in like bramble and dirt and bloody and beaten, and they say, "Are you okay? Oh my gosh." And she looks at them and says, "Would you like to learn about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?"
That would be really funny.
Cut to black.
Cut to black. I like that.
I think that would have been...
I like that.
I was hoping they would do that.
And then say, like, instead of the Topher Grace being like, did you get a pamphlet? Just save that for Sister Paxton.
Yeah, save
That's
that for
funny.
her. Like, and then you actually have like a character who has made a decision, and then the audience has to make a decision of like, okay, is she free? Has she earned her belief, or is she still in this prison? Like
a humorous way to end a dark film. Yeah, I like that.
I think that would have been really fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
That reminds me of the ending of Get Out.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which was done really well, so I think that could work.
Right. And
I think that could work.
I feel like the reason these two are doing well is because of the Jordan Peele phenomenon of like, because he's really the one who's brought back the Twilight Zone.
Yes.
The new Twilight Zone with a bit of social commentary thrown in.
Don't get me started on Jordan Peele. I love that man.
Yeah, I can't wait for his next movie. We should. But
instead of Nope, it's Yes.
Yeah, it's Yep.
Yep.
Well, this has been a really fun discussion. I knew it would be. I think it's a good movie. I think that, if a Catholic's going to watch it, just go in knowing that it's an R-rated movie with some questionable content, I suppose. But the fun thing about it is that it wrong-foots you, and it keeps changing the stakes, and it's having fun. It's unfolding. It's not until the end, it is not a statement about what is true and what is not. It's like a game with the audience and the filmmakers.
Yeah, I appreciated that. I appreciated all the technical aspects of the film that I thought were pretty exemplary. And I, for one, cannot wait to see what these guys do next.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah.
And Hugh Grant knocks out of the park.
Yeah.
He does this a lot.
Oscar nom.
He does. I don't know about that. He does this a lot. Ooh. He does a little Hugh Grantisms. Ooh.
If you're a Hugh Grant fan, you'll probably like this movie. I'll say that. Yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah. Let's cut Hugh Grant in here.
Jar Jar Binks.
No, not the Jar Jar Binks. Our audiences that haven't seen this movie are going to have zero context to Jar Jar Binks.
Jesus, Jar Jar Binks. Thank you very much. This was the Catholic Film Club, and I'm Michael Coy, and this is Patrick Batista, and this is brought to you by the Center for Catholic Media at Benedictine College in Atchison, Kansas. Please follow us on our social to keep up with the movies we'll be covering in the future, and God bless.
Yeah.
Catholicism is the one true religion.
Have a great heretical day.
Don't do that. That's a bad thing to do.